Hey, it's me. I'm the guy with the thing and the YouTubes and the whatever. The Fan of Football 813. We started a Facebook group. You have YouTube. Go share, like, subscribe. Please subscribe. But this is week 5 for the college football previews. All right, the Saturday games for this week. There's some good ones. It's not as jam packed as last week. Really, last week just had a whole lot of even games, and which ended up being true for the most part for a lot of them. There were a bunch of upsets, a lot of back and forth, just fun games. The first one we'll start off with is the Tennessee Volunteers and the Georgia Bulldogs. This one, I think, is Georgia. Tennessee, they've looked, really bad. The Gators put up 47 on them last week in Neyland Stadium, which is the most Gator team has ever scored in Knoxville. Their offense couldn't. They did turn it over six times. Their offense though they kind of have pieces here and there, and sometimes it looks okay, but just not consistently. Georgia doesn't look like the number 2 team in the country to me. I let it known with my reviews against Missouri what I think about Georgia. They're a good team. They're probably good enough to win the East. They're not good enough to go without losing 2 games at least, in my opinion. But that being said, this is another one of those games where it's an indictment more of how bad Tennessee is. Georgia should win easy. This should not be close. Alright, the next game, BYU Cougars taking on the Washington Huskies. It's kind of an interesting one. BYU starting off well. They're 3-1. They're ranked in the top 25. They have a really good defense. They have some parts. They have an experienced quarterback. Their running game has been fine. That being said, I still don't know that they're enough for Washington. They haven't looked like gangbusters. They have a good quarterback in Jake Browning. They have a good running back in Myles Gaskin. They have a good receiver in Aaron Fuller. They have good pieces. Their defense is good. They're a very just sound team overall. I don't see, this could be an upset. BYU could go in there. They've shown they're capable of doing that, beating Wisconsin a few weeks ago, and kind of in BYU's history, they're kind of just known for doing that kind of thing. This is Washington's game. I think Washington will come out. Maybe it's kind of close. Maybe it's like a 30-20 kind of game that Washington wins. The Oregon Ducks take on the California Golden Bears. Cal just became ranked, so this is technically a ranked matchup. Oregon's coming off a heartbreaking loss to Stanford. They had a really large lead. Then things just kind of bounced away from them there. Cal's had a really good defense this year. Their offense, it's kind of, they've done well enough to make this a scare for Oregon, I think. But Oregon's looked way too good. To me, Oregon should still be undefeated. They're way better than Stanford, in my opinion. Just from actually watching the game and the talent and everything. Oregon has Justin Herbert at quarterback. He's one of the best in the country. And NFL, people are looking at him as potentially the number 1 overall pick in next year's draft. But I think Oregon will be too much for California, so I think Oregon wins that one. Indiana Hoosiers going into Rutgers. Indiana, they had a fight. They were 3-0 going into Michigan State. They kept it close. They almost came back. They weren't quite able to do it. They lost their first one. Indiana's looked like actually a competitive team. They should be able to eke into the bowl, the bowl lineup at the end of the year. And I think this will give them their 4th win. Rutgers has not looked very good at all. They lost to the Buffalo Bulls from the MAC 42-13 last week, which is, Buffalo looks really, really good, but even still, I don't think they should have been blown out necessarily by Buffalo, and I think Indiana ends up with this one. The Louisiana Raging Cajuns taking on the Alabama Crimson Tide is kind of a no brainer. Tua Tagovailoa at the quarterback for Alabama. He's looked way too good. Alabama's team has looked way too good. Louisiana, they don't have. Normally, I try to look for the bright spots in the smaller schools, and Louisiana historically has been able to kind of do things offensively. I mean, this year they're okay, but they shouldn't keep it close. Alabama should roll, pun intended, with that one. All right, the next game is Syracuse and Clemson. I think this is a good matchup. Syracuse did upset Clemson last year, and Syracuse looks like a much better team this year. They're 4-0. Their offense is rolling. Quarterback Eric Dungey, he's one of the best in the ACC. Clemson, they've looked talented. They'll probably be going with their freshman quarterback Trevor Lawrence. Either way, I think they'll be fine. Kelly Bryant's a good quarterback. Clemson, they have the NFL defensive line. Basically, they have a good defense. They can very much slow down Syracuse, and they might be in it for the revenge factor, because of last year. I think Syracuse can keep it close. I think they could potentially come out with the win here. Clemson is on definite upset alert. I think, though, Clemson wins. I think they'll learn from last year's mistakes in the game. It's in Clemson. It's in Death Valley. So I think Clemson takes that one. All right, one of the games I'm looking forward to most, West Virginia Mountaineers and the Texas Tech Red Raiders. Anybody knows me knows I love passing offenses. I love back and forth scores. The games that are 56-56 going overtime, those are my games. Screw defense, And this is that kind of game. Will Grier, the quarterback for West Virginia, he's looked great. He's a definite Heisman candidate. He had 5 touchdown passes last weekend. They have one of maybe the best wide receiving core in the country with Jennings and David Sills at 5th and Marcus Sims and whoever the hell they want to put out there. They just go catch passes. Texas Tech, they've had a long history in the Mike Leach days and now with Cliff Kingsbury. They pass it all around the place. That's what they do. Their running game has gotten better over the year. They've sort of used it a little bit more, but they have a freshman quarterback, Alan Bowman. A couple weeks ago, he set a Big 12 record for a freshman with 605 passing yards and 5 touchdowns. Last week, against Oklahoma State, and a big upset victory over them, he went for 397 and 2 touchdowns. I think this is a game that this should be track meet. This should be awesome to watch. Both quarterbacks easily could get like 5 touchdown passes each and at least 400 yards passing. If they're below 350, if they're below 350, it'll either be just a weird game that isn't coming out the way I suspect, or one of the teams like Texas Tech maybe gets a running game going a little bit more. But even still, this should be a track meet. It should be fun to watch. I definitely recommend tuning into that one. Central Michigan Chippewas take on the Michigan State Spartans. And by the way, I picked West Virginia for the last game. So Central Michigan Chippewas take on the Michigan State Spartans. This shouldn't be close. Michigan State, they haven't looked great, but Central Michigan's been really struggling this year at quarterback, just overall. Michigan State, they should come out with that win. The Arkansas Razorbacks take on the Texas A&M Aggies. Arkansas look terrible. Texas A&M, Kellen Mond, he's a good quarterback. They have a good running back in Travion Williams. I don't see this being much of an issue for Texas A&M just because Arkansas has really been bad, which kind of shocked about. I think they have a pretty good coach in Chad Morris, but they haven't done it so far. They have definite struggles at quarterback. All right, the Army Black Knights and the Buffalo Bulls. This is kind of an under-the-radar game. Most people don't know about these teams, so that's why I'm here. Army very nearly beat Oklahoma last weekend. They took them to overtime. They lost 28-21 overtime. Their running game looked great. They had the ball for about 44 minutes in the game, or well over 40 anyway. They have a really good offense. Their defense has played well. Holding Oklahoma's offense to 28 points is nothing to sneeze at. And the week before against Hawaii, with the way Hawaii has been tossing it around the yard this year, they held them to 21 points in a win over Hawaii. Part of it is their offense to keep the ball for a long time, but when the defense has had to step up, generally they've done so. Against Hawaii, they knocked down a pass late in the game that ended Hawaii's chance to tie it, and keeping, like I said, Oklahoma to 21 and then only a touchdown, the touchdown in overtime. They've done well. Buffalo, they're 4-0. They're kind of the surprise of the year. They killed Rutgers. They have a quarterback, Tyree Jackson. He's 6'7". He's been great. Their wide receiver, Anthony Johnson, one of the best in the country. He had only 2 catches last week, but went for 101 yards and 1 touchdown. This game was kind of difficult for me to choose just because they're both playing well. I don't think this will necessarily be a shootout, just mostly because the way Army plays offense, the ball control. But I do think it'll be a really close 24-21, 27-24 kind of game, maybe a last second field goal or a last second touchdown kind of wins. That being said, I'm going to go with Army to actually win the game. I think they'll be, a little too much. They have the experience in these kind of games, just beating Oklahoma last week and, like I said, Hawaii the week before. So I think Army comes there. All right, next game, Oklahoma State Cowboys take on the Kansas Jayhawks. And Kansas, they look more competitive this year, but it's still not. I don't think they're good enough to keep up with Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State did just get upset by Texas Tech last week. I think they'll correct that. Taylor Cornelius is still a pretty good quarterback. They have Justice Hill at running back, one of the best in the country, even if all they do is just hand it off to him, 20 times. I mean, he could go off in this game, have a kind of a coming out party. Well, not coming out party, but maybe for this season, he might go over 200 yards rushing. They might put it in his hands. So I think Oklahoma State should win pretty decisively in this game. The Temple Owls and the Boston College Eagles. This is they both are kind of the same team. They run the ball really well. They play pretty good defense. Their quarterback situation normally is kind of, they kind of have a game manager situation. The head coach for Boston College, Steve Addazio, he used to be the head coach at Temple. So, it could be kind of a slugfest, maybe low scoring, 17-14, 20-17 sort of game. But I think Boston College comes out with the victory in this. I think A.J. Dillon, who was held down last week, he'll go off. I think the edge more so is the quarterback situation, I feel, will go to Boston College and Anthony Brown. Last week, he did throw 4 interceptions, which is not good, but the first 2 games of the year, he's had games with 4 and 3 touchdown passes in each, and I think he does well enough to. I don't think he'll make the 4 interception mistake again against Temple, and I think he'll do well enough to be kind of the variable that leads them to a win. So I think Boston College goes with that. Bowling Green Falcons take on the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. Bowling Green, I want to like them. They've always had really good offenses going to 2004 with Omar Jacobs, and he was passing it around, and they've usually had really good teams. Tyler Sheehan, and they look better in offense this year behind Jarrett Dagey. They're still not quite putting it all together, though. Georgia Tech, they have that triple option offense that gives everybody fits, and in this case, I think the talent for Georgia Tech is a little too much. I don't think Bowling Green will be able to really slow them down. So I'm going to go with Georgia Tech in this one. A nice, interesting ACC matchup. Virginia Cavaliers taking on NC State Wolfpack. Virginia, they have a quarterback in Bryce Perkins. He's a transfer in. He's done really well so far at quarterback for them. They're 3-1 so far. Their defense has done well. North Carolina State, they have a quarterback, Ryan Finley, who's an NFL prospect. They have all kinds of. They have some really Kelvin Harmon at wide receiver, Gillespie at running back. They have a potentially really good offense. This one was difficult for me to choose because I think Virginia is better than people kind of realize. I think this is a game that will be a really good game. It should be a close game. Both offenses have the potential to score in the 20s. They could both score in the 30s, but I think both defenses are just good enough to stop that. So I think a mid-20s kind of game. But I'm going to go with NC State for that one. I think they win. UMass and Ohio. UMass, they finally got their offense going last week. They put up 49 points. The Ohio Bobcats, they had a heartbreaker last week. They had a big lead on Cincinnati. They were up 24-7. They lost 34-30. Even though Ohio had the ball on the 1 yard line of Cincinnati late in the game with less than a minute left, and they couldn't get it in the end zone. They have a good quarterback in Nathan Rourke. He's a receiver, Poppy White, but he's a good return guy. They kind of use him for everything. This was kind of difficult for me to pick as well, but Ohio, I think, has the experience. They have the coach and Frank Solich. I think Ohio comes out with this one. All right, Louisiana Monroe and Georgia State. Louisiana Monroe, they both lost last week. Louisiana Monroe has the better quarterback, I think, overall. Dan Ellington for Georgia State, he's done fine, but Caleb Evans, he's got the experience. He's got the. I don't know. He's a good player. I think that's kind of the edge there. I think Louisiana Monroe should win that one. Kent State Golden Flashes and Ball State Cardinals. Kent State kept it close against Ole Miss. They were tied 7-7 last week. They have a quarterback in Woody Barrett. This could be an interesting matchup between quarterbacks. Woody Barrett, he's a transfer from Auburn, and he's kind of as you would suspect, he's a dual threat. He can run it, he can pass it as well. And then the quarterback for Ball State is Riley Neal, who he's done really well for them the past few years. He'd gotten hurt early in the season last year. Ball State has two really good running backs in James Gilbert and Caleb Huntley. I think I keep forgetting his name. Yeah, Caleb Huntley. Last year, James Gilbert got hurt early on. Caleb Huntley filled in and ran for 1,000 yards. 2 years ago, James Gilbert ran for over 1,300 yards, so they have a good 1-2 punch there. I went with Kent State for this one. This could go either way. And now that I'm talking it out loud, I kind of want to go with Ball State because of the running game. But I think Kent State, they're not doing very bad. They should be okay in the MAC, and I think Kent State wins. Baylor Bears taking on Oklahoma Sooners. Baylor's 3-1. They've tripled their win output from last year when they only won one game. Oklahoma, they're 4-0. Kyler Murray, their quarterback, he's looked like a potential Heisman candidate. I don't know that Baylor, their quarterback Charlie Brewer, he's done okay. I think Oklahoma, though, should win this. I have a hard time seeing Baylor really keeping it close for a good portion of the game. Maybe the first quarter or first half. Half. I think Oklahoma, though, their depth is a little too much right now. So Oklahoma wins. The Pittsburgh Panthers take on the UCF Knights. Pittsburgh's been kind of up and down. They're 2-2. They put up 35 points last week in a loss. They put up 24 points against Georgia Tech the week before in a win. Their quarterback, Kenny Pickett, he's a decent dual threat kind of guy. They have a good running back in Quadri Allison, who ran for 1,000 yards a few years ago. This is something, this will be a battle for UCF. UCF has looked good offensively, this year so far. Mackenzie Milton, he's looked great. He had 6 touchdowns last weekend, 3 running, 3 passing, or last week. UCF, their offense has been good. Their defense has been not very good. They're missing a lot of tackles and assignments. They can force turnovers for sure. Part of that's because they know their offense can score in a blink. I think this will be I think it might be close for a while, but I think UCF has just enough offense, and hopefully their defense comes through with a couple of key takeaways. I think UCF will come out with the victory in that one. Cincinnati Bearcats and UConn. Cincinnati's 4-0. They're one of the surprises of the year, in my opinion. They only had 4 wins all of last year. They came from way behind against Ohio last week to win. UConn, their defense has been bad. They have one good player in David Pindle. I know they have some other actually decent players, but Pindle's been the most consistent one for them. He can run and throw. Cincinnati's quarterback Desmond Ridder, he's a freshman. He's been looking really, really good. Their running back Michael Warren, he's got almost over 400 yards rushing already. This game I think goes to Cincinnati though. I think they're a little too good. Old Dominion Monarchs and the ECU Pirates. Old Dominion coming off a huge upset victory against Virginia Tech last week. Blake DeRussa. I'm going to look that one up because I don't want to make a mistake. And Blake LaRussa. He came in and threw for 495 last week and 4 touchdowns. And Jeremy Cox at running back ran for 130 yards. ECU, they're 1-3. They're kind of weird. They're 1-2. They lost to a 1AA team. They lost last week in a close game to USF. Then they killed North Carolina in between. Their quarterback, Reed Herring, he can throw it all over the place. They have a potentially good offense. Old Dominion, clearly, they put up 49 against Virginia Tech and over 630 yards against them. This could be kind of a shootout. I'm actually going with East Carolina in this one. I think this is one of the games where Old Dominion, they were up last week, and I think they had a really good day, kind of the old saying, any given Sunday, any given Saturday. I feel like that describes Old Dominion's game last weekend. I don't think they carry it over. So I pick ECU, East Carolina Pirates, to actually win this one. Old Dominion, my friend Corey, he's from Virginia. He wanted me to shout him out. So good job, Corey. It was all you. Coastal Carolina, Chanticleers, and Troy. This will be a good one. Coastal Carolina, they have that teal turf, but this is going to be in Troy where it's just green. Troy, they won 10 games the last 2 years in the Sun Belt. They beat Nebraska a few weeks ago. They're 3-1. Troy is. Coastal Carolina, though, is also 3-1. Their offenses are pretty good. They both just really have solid teams. This is a game, I think, this really could go either way. Caleb Barker at Troy, he's done really well. They kind of go back and forth between him and Sawyer Smith. Coastal Carolina, they have Chilton Anderson at quarterback, and they kind of switch him out with Bryce Carpenter, who's a freshman, a former Mr. Florida football player. I don't know, this is one of those games. It'll be fun. It'll be fun. I'm picking Troy. I think they have, the little bit more experience, especially in these kind of games at this level so far. But this could be the Chanticleers coming out party in the Sun Belt. If they beat Troy, watch out for them. But I do think Troy will end up with the victory there. This next game, Miami of Ohio and Western Michigan. Western Michigan, they have Jamari Bogan and Levante Bellamy at running back, which both last week ran for over 100 yards. Their quarterback, John Wasink, was 20-25 last weekend. I Uh, Miami of Ohio, they have potential. They have Gus Ragland at quarterback. Alonzo Smith, the running back, had a breakout game last week with like 164 yards rushing, I believe. I don't know. I just think though, Western Michigan's overall a better team. They offensively, defensively, obviously, a better team, whatever that means. So I'm actually thinking Western Michigan should win that one. It could be close. I don't know. I think Western Michigan should be. They're not going to blow them out, but it could be like 31-20, kind of. Just kind of. They'll get a lead. Miami of Ohio is good enough to make some plays, keep it kind of close, but Western Michigan comes out in the end. South Alabama and Appalachian State. South Alabama, they put up 35 points last week on Memphis, so their offense has the potential. Their quarterback, Evan Orth, threw for like 360 and 3 touchdowns. That being said, Appalachian State has been so good. They dropped 72 last week. They have Jalen Moore. He's a 1,000-yard rusher the last couple of seasons. Their quarterback, Zach Thomas, has played well enough. They never really put a whole lot on the quarterbacks in Appalachian State, partially because they haven't needed to. Like, they kind of just go in and do their thing and let the rest of the team, and not even the offense. They have special teams touchdowns that do things on defense. Appalachian State might be the best team in the Sun Belt, so I think Appalachian State comes out with the win there. Rice Owls take on the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. Rice gave Southern Miss a battle. They've actually been in their games all this year. They won their first one. They gave Houston, Hawaii, and Southern Miss games. They put up some points, 27, 29, 22, but their defense is giving up 45, 43, and 40. Wake Forest's offense, they've looked really good so far this year. They lost 56-27 in Notre Dame last week, but they still put up 27. The week before, they put up 34 in a loss, and then 2 weeks prior, they put up 23 and 51. So their offense has been doing well. Quarterback Sam Hartman stepping in as a redshirt freshman, doing some good things, passing the ball. I think Wake Forest should come out with the win in that one. All right, Purdue Boilermakers, and Nebraska Cornhuskers. This is kind of the tale of two teams, obviously. But Purdue's 1-3. Nebraska is 0-3 and hasn't looked good. Yeah, they played 3 good teams, but they've not been competitive. Purdue is 1-3. They beat Boston College last week in a good victory for them defensively, holding down the running back at Boston College, A.J. Dillon, and getting 4 interceptions against their quarterback. Their offense has been able to move the ball. Their 3 losses. They lost to 3 points to Missouri. They lost to 1 point to Eastern Michigan, and they lost by 4 points to Northwestern. So they very easily could be 4-0, and I think they get their second win so far. I think Purdue will be too much for Nebraska. Florida State and Louisville. Florida State, they've not looked great this year. They looked better last week against Northern Illinois. That being said, Louisville has looked terrible. Yeah, they're 2-2, but they can't. As much as I've ragged on DeAndre Francois, the quarterback for Florida State, he is better than what Louisville has at quarterback right now. Florida State's team, I think, is just better. They have Cam Akers is a good running back. Louisville hasn't shown much. It's kind of weird. They're just kind of there playing a game, and I think Florida State wins. This might be kind of an ugly game, but I think Florida State should come out with it there. Southern Miss takes on Auburn. Southern Miss has a really good passing game. Jack Abrahams, he's done great this year. The talent, though, goes to Auburn. Jarrett Stidham at quarterback, everything they have running the ball defensively. Southern Miss maybe, has the energy to keep it close a little bit, first quarter maybe, but I think Auburn should have a pretty decisive victory there. Tennessee State, they're 1AA team taking on Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, they haven't been wonderful. They're 2-2, but they have the talent at least to beat the 1AA team. So that one should be. I can see that being like a 30-10 kind of game, maybe 40-10. Vanderbilt should win. Nevada Wolfpack, you take on the Air Force Falcons. This could be a shootout. Nevada, Ty Ganji at quarterback. He can pass it all around. Air Force has a triple option offense. They can keep the ball for a while. They had it for like over 40 minutes last week against Utah State, but they gave up 42 points in the limited time that Utah State had it. Nevada has kind of a passing. They had a guy at Toa Tower run for 170, and their quarterback threw for like over 300 or whatever. This could be a shootout. This should go back and forth, but I think Nevada ends up with the victory there. But this is really a coin flip. I kind of had a tough time deciding this one. The Michigan Wolverines take on the Northwestern Wildcats. Northwestern, Clayton Thorson, he's a good quarterback. Jeremy Larkin, he's done well at running back. They kind of struggled early this year. They can keep it close against Michigan. Northwestern has always played well against these teams, the Michigan and Ohio States, of the Big Ten. But I think Michigan, Shea Patterson's kind of turning on a little bit. Karan Higdon, the running back for Michigan, their defense has actually been playing really well. So I think Michigan wins that one. It could be an upset, but I think Michigan will be all right there. Florida Gators taking on the Mississippi State Bulldogs. The Gators looked really good against Tennessee. Their defense forced 6 turnovers. Felipe Franks, he was 9 of 18, but from 172, 3 touchdowns, no picks. He ran for a touchdown. Their running game did pretty well. It's just their offense needs to be a little more consistent. They had the short fields with all the turnovers. They were able to get some big plays offensively and move the ball for a few good drives against Tennessee, but they're going to need to do more of the same against Mississippi State. Mississippi State's coming off being upset by Kentucky 20-7, but Mississippi State is no slouch. Nick Fitzgerald, he's one of the best dual threat quarterbacks to ever play in the SEC, and that includes Tim Tebow at Florida. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Fitzgerald is really close to breaking his quarterback rushing record in the SEC. He ran for 1,000 yards a couple years ago, almost 1,000 last year. Overall, he's done well. They're 3-1. Before last week, he was doing well, and this will be a really good game. It's one of the games of the day, in my opinion. Yes, I'm a Gator fan, but most people who've seen the teams, and especially compared to the rest of the slate of Saturday, which is kind of, mediocre, this should be one of the games of the day. I'm going to go with Florida, mainly because I think their defense, David Reese is back at linebacker, and he had a fantastic game coming in 11 tackles, and I think he either got an interception or forced one. He was just kind of all over the place. And I think Frank's the quarterback edge goes to Fitzgerald. He's the better quarterback right now than Frank's. But I think the Gators should. And Dan Mullen, he's the Gator coach. He was Mississippi State's head coach for the past 8 or 9 years there. And it's in Stark Vegas. They have the cowbells where if anybody's ever heard a game with Mississippi State at their stadium, between the plays, all the fans have cowbells and they're shaking them and making all kinds of noise. So it'll be an intense atmosphere, but I think the Gators come out with a victory there. All right, the Utah Utes taking the Washington State Cougars. Utah and their Sac Lake cities traveling to Pullman, Washington. Washington State had Gardner Minshew. He's been throwing it all over the place. He threw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns last week against USC, almost upsetting them, only losing 39-36. Utah, they have a good running back in Zach Moss. They have good quarterback play, not as good as Washington State. I'm actually giving this to Washington State, and I lost my place over here. But yeah, okay. So This could be a good game. Utah State has a really good defense, as I said, and with as much as Washington State passes it, they could sack him a whole bunch of times. But I think Minshew's shown well enough. I think Washington State comes out with a nice win here. Liberty Flames taking on the New Mexico Lobos. Liberty has quarterback Stephen Buckshot Calvert, Antonio Gandy Golden at wide receiver. They had the potential on offense. New Mexico's the Lobos, they've looked better on offense this year. They've kind of transformed their almost strictly triple option offense to more of a what Arizona used to run, what West Virginia used to run back in the day with under Rich Rodriguez, and way back when West Virginia, if any of you guys remember when Pat White and Steve Slayton were there. That's sort of the offense that New Mexico's running, and they've so far the first 3 games they've been pretty successful doing it. This could be a shootout. This could go back and forth, but I think New Mexico comes out with a win there. Arkansas State Red Wolves taking on the Georgia Southern Eagles. Arkansas State 3-1. Georgia Southern is 2-1, and they have a triple option that could give everybody fits. Arkansas State is normally one of the best teams in the Sun Belt. Their quarterback Justice Hansen, he's been putting up. Not last week, he threw 3 touchdown passes. Last year, I've said this before, he threw for nearly 4,000 yards, 37 touchdown passes. Georgia Southern, they have a quarterback in Shea Wertz who, like I said, the triple option. He can run it as well. And that could keep it away from Arkansas State. They can play ball control similar to what Army, Navy, Air Force, Georgia Tech do. So this actually will be, I think, a pretty good game, a pretty close game. I think the edge goes to Arkansas State, though. I think they'll have... It's more so that I think their offense will be a little too much for Georgia Southern to really... I think Arkansas State can get a lead, and a decent-sized lead, in Georgia Southern, I'm not sure can score quickly enough to keep up with their offense. Maybe, but I think Arkansas State wins. Northern Illinois taking on Eastern Michigan. Northern Illinois is 1-3. Eastern Michigan's 2-2, and very nearly upset San Diego State last week. Their quarterback Mike Glass III, he's a good dual threat, running and passing. They have some pretty good wide receivers in Blake Banham, but also their running game, Ian Erickson and Shaq Van. They just kind of are a solid team. They don't do anything especially well other than keep games close. Northern Illinois, Marcus Childers at quarterback. He's more of a passer, but he's actually a pretty good dual threat kind of guy. I'm going with Northern Illinois. This was a coin flip for me. I would not be surprised at all if Eastern Michigan wins. I'm like right on that fence, but I think Northern Illinois, I suspect they'll be one of the better teams in the MAC. So far, they haven't quite looked up to snuff as they have in the past years when they've been able to compete with Florida State's. Like, they lost to Florida State last week, which in the past they might have beaten them or at least kept it closer than what that was. But I think Northern Illinois, I'm going to go with them to beat Eastern Michigan for that game. Virginia Tech Hokies coming off a big loss to the Duke Blue Devils. And Duke is actually 4-0 for the second year in a row. And that's the first time they've done that since, I think, the 50s or something. Virginia Tech's quarterback Josh Jackson, he was hurt in that game against Old Dominion. And I'm not sure if he will be back or not. Duke, they're kind of in an advantage. They're kind of in a similar situation. A few weeks ago, their quarterback, Daniel Jones, he got hurt, but the backup has come in and played really well. I think his name is Quentin Harris. So he's come in. He's played well. Their defense has played well. I went with Virginia Tech. I think Virginia Tech is going to correct everything that went wrong last weekend. And their offense wasn't the problem. They put up 35 points. It was their defense. I think their defense will be angry. I think even if Josh Jackson does not play for Virginia Tech, they have enough pieces around their offense. Ryan Willis, he's the quarterback that will probably play. He's got experience. If I'm not mistaken, he's a transfer from Kansas, and so he's had some experience in the Big 12. I'm gonna double check that just to be sure. Yeah, so he played at Kansas the last few years, and he was a starter for them. Yeah, Kansas was bad, but at least he's got the experience against big time schools, and he's for Virginia Tech. So I think Virginia Tech wins that. I think they'll kind of make amends a little bit for last week. All right, one AA Houston Baptist taking on Southern Methodist. Southern Methodist had a nice victory, a gutsy victory against Navy last weekend, where they went for a 2-point conversion in overtime to win outright instead of tying it to keep it going. I think Southern Methodist will continue that. Houston Baptist shouldn't put up much of a fight. SMU, Ben Hicks, he's one of the better quarterbacks in the group of 5, at the very least in the American Athletic Conference. So I think SMU comes out with the win there. All right, the UTEP Miners and the UTSA Roadrunners. UTSA won last week. UTEP is still on a 16-game losing streak, and they very well could end that this weekend. UTSA, they haven't looked great. Neither has UTEP. UTEP very nearly won last week. They lost 27-20, but they gave up, I think, a blocked punt and a fumble return for touchdowns. If they get out of their own way, they could come out with a victory. UTSA, I went with them to win until UTEP proves me wrong. I'm going to go against them. But shout out to my friend Mike, who he doesn't really care about football, but he's going for UTEP until they win. So all right, next game, Florida Atlantic Owls. They're going in against Middle Tennessee State Blue Raiders. This will be a pretty good CUSA game. Middle Tennessee has a good quarterback, and Brent Stockstill, that he can pass all over the place. They can move it. Florida Atlantic put up 36 against UCF last week in a loss. Devin Singletary, their running back, who had an amazing season last year, 32 rushing touchdowns last season. He had 31 yards rushing last week and 3 touchdowns. Their quarterback, Chris Robeson, he's a transfer from Oklahoma. He's done pretty well so far. He didn't have a very good game last week, but he set the Florida Atlantic record with 471 passing yards a few weeks ago. It could go kind of back and forth, but I think Florida Atlantic comes out with the win here. The next game, Boise State Broncos and Wyoming Cowboys. Boise State, Brett Rypien, one of the best quarterbacks in the country, period. He threw it all over the place. They had a bye last week after coming off a loss to Oklahoma State. I think they right that ship. Alexander Madison, their running back, he had 1,000 yards last year. Wyoming, yeah, they're 2-2, but they just haven't looked the same. They're not. I don't know if they'll make a bowl game. I think Boise State should win pretty decisively in this one. All right, the next game, Hawaii Rainbow Warriors take on the San Jose State Spartans. Hawaii, they're one of the surprise teams of the year, and they're really fun. They're 4-1. They're like this close from being 5-0. Cole McDonald, that quarterback, he's been lighting it up. Last week against Duquesne, he threw his first interception of the season, which is, saying a lot, because they run this run and shoot offense where they pass. They just go pass. And he's completing, a really high percentage of his passes within that offense. Let me look exactly. So far, he's completed 66% for 1,759 yards, and that's only in, 5 games? So last week, like I said, he threw the first interception of the season. He was like, whatever, and then he went on to throw 5 touchdown passes. He's got 20 touchdown passes to 1 interception so far. That's amazing. And I think he'll keep it up this weekend. San Jose State, they've shown really nothing. I want to say something good about all these teams. Their quarterback, Montel Aaron, is Bailey Gaither might be the best thing about their offense. He's put up a couple 100-yard games this year, but I don't think they keep it close. I think Cole McDonald puts up another 5, maybe 6 touchdown passes. I wouldn't be surprised if they have 40 by halftime, or at least 30. I love watching these passing teams though. I always enjoyed watching Hawaii back in the early 2000s when they had Timmy Chang, and later on they had Colt Brennan. So I think Cole McDonald, he's kind of gone back to making Hawaii what they should be, in my opinion. So I think Hawaii should get a pretty big win there. Charlotte 49ers taking on UAB Blazers. Charlotte, they have a good freshman quarterback in Chris Reynolds. He's done well. They've been a lot more competitive this season than they have. They're only a 5-year-old program. Like, they started football in like 2013, I think. UAB, they're 2-1. They have a good running back in Spencer Brown. AJ Earley, he's a pretty good quarterback himself. I think UAB will be a little bit too much for Charlotte, though. It potentially could be a kind of a shootout. It could go back and forth, but I think UAB comes away with the win in the end. The Iowa State Cyclones take on the TCU Horned Frogs. Iowa State hasn't looked great this year. TCU, they're 2-2. They just got pretty much blown out by Texas after losing to Ohio State. TCU's offense usually is good. Sean Robinson at quarterback, he's still a pretty good quarterback overall. I think they'll be too much for Iowa State. Iowa State could keep it close. They kept it close against Oklahoma a couple weeks ago, but I think TCU rights their ship with that one. So I think TCU will win. I'm just kind of looking here because these things are sort of out of style. But all right. One of the 2 big games of the day, the Ohio State Buckeyes take on the Penn State Nittany Lions. Boy, is there a lot to say, a lot to break down about this one. Let's start with what people do know. A lot of people know Penn State. Trace McSorley the past few years been great. He's definitely a Heisman candidate in my mind. He can run it, he can throw it. He's more, he's not. He looks more to pass more often than often, but he can definitely run when he needs to and do it very effectively. So he's a Heisman candidate in my mind. Miles Sanders, the running back that took over for Saquon Barkley, he kind of had a coming out party last week against Illinois. He ran for 200 yards. They have receivers, Casey Handler and Jawan Johnson. Their offense has the potential. They can move it up and down the field. I know I talk about their offenses a lot. They all have really good defensive players. I'll have to figure out a better way to highlight some of these defensive players as well. And maybe I can go. I'm here now. I'm gonna go look up some stats. But while I do that, let's talk about Ohio State as well. Their offense, Dwayne Haskins. He's a definite Heisman contender. He had 5 touchdown passes last week. He's thrown 16 touchdowns and 1 interception so far. J.K. Dobbins and Mike Weber are both 2 running backs, each with 1,000-yard rushing seasons the last 2 years. And Dobbins has run for 323 and Mike Weber has run for 299. So they're right there neck and neck. You don't know what's going to go on. Urban Meyer knows how to recruit offensive skill guys. And, I mean, Urban Meyer just knows how to recruit, period. So that's just, one of those things. Unfortunately, there aren't many defensive stats to look up here, but this is one of those games. This will give. They're both in Big Ten East. They're both in the top 10. This could be for a potential playoff spot going down the road. Like I said, both teams have quarterbacks that are definitely up there for the Heisman. I think Ohio State wins. It's going to be in Happy Valley. They're going to have a whiteout. Penn State, this could be a classic like a couple years ago or in last 2 years have been classics. very realistically could go either way. Neither team has looked so unbeatable that they couldn't beat the other. I give the edge to Ohio State. I think Dwayne Haskins is playing on another level right now. He's had 2 games so far where he's had more touchdown passes than incompletions. I think the 2 running backs for Ohio State, I do think their defense has been they're okay. But I'm giving the edge in this one to Ohio State. Very, very close. This could go to overtime. It's a really tough decision for me to make, but I think Ohio State in the end will win. The other really big game between 2 top 10 teams is the Stanford Cardinal and the Notre Dame Fighting Irish, the non-plural schools. Stanford's coming off a big come from way behind victory against Oregon. Notre Dame actually looked good last week against Wake Forest. They won 56-27, which early in the season I was like, they're not a top 10 team. They've looked terrible. But their quarterback Ian Book kind of righted the ship against Wake Forest. Their offense was able to move it like they want them to. Their defense is actually pretty good. And they gave up 27 to Wake Forest. Wake Forest actually has a good offense. People don't really realize that. Stanford, KJ Castell at quarterback, he's been playing well. Bryce Love at running back, he's not really done. He hasn't turned it on yet. And yeah, he ran for 89 yards and a touchdown against Oregon, but he hasn't had that game this year. I'm not sure what's going on there. This is a coin flip. Seeing how Oregon was able to move up and down the field on Stanford's defense, this is why I'm giving the edge to Notre Dame. I think the Notre Dame offense is in some ways similar to Oregon with the concepts and everything. I think if Notre Dame were to exploit what Oregon exploited, they should be able to get a decent lead, and if they do, I think they'll hold on to it. The Notre Dame's defense, I think they are a better defense than what Oregon has, and nothing against Oregon, they're fine. And Notre Dame's learning. They just saw what happened last week. If they get a nice lead, they're gonna basically learn from Oregon's mistakes. So I'm going with Notre Dame in the end with this one. All right, the South Carolina Gamecocks taking on Kentucky. Kentucky's 4-0. They got themselves ranked. They killed Mississippi State last year. Benny Snell Jr. ran for 165 and 4 touchdowns. South Carolina has a good quarterback in Jake Bentley. Deebo Samuel's one of the best all-purpose guys in the country. He can return punts, kicks. He's a really good receiver. These could be really close. Could go back and forth. I'm giving the edge to South Carolina mainly because Kentucky, all they really have is Benny Snell, and he's been great. But the quarterback play for Kentucky, he's been subpar, and I think South Carolina is a good enough team to come through and exploit that as well to shut them down a little bit. I think South Carolina has a pretty good overall team anyway. This should be a pretty good game, but South Carolina I think wins. Arkansas Pine Bluff taking on 1AA Florida International. Florida International is 2-2. Quarterback James Morgan, he's a transfer from Bowling Green. He's done pretty well. Running back Shandarius Phillips, he's a good running back. I don't think Florida International should have any problem with this one, so I think they win that. Louisiana Tech and North Texas. One of the better games of the day that people don't know really about, but CUSA teams, both really good on offense. Jamar Smith, the quarterback for Louisiana Tech, threw for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns last week against LSU and almost brought them back to win. North Texas Mason Fine, he can pass it all over the place himself. This should be a shootout. This should be a really fun game. I want to watch this game just because of that. I really was going back and forth, and I might still go back and forth, but I'm giving the slight edge to Louisiana Tech. North Texas did kill Arkansas a few weeks ago from the SEC, And Louisiana Tech only lost 38-21 to LSU, but LSU's a top 10 team, and LSU's looked really good. And they were down 24-0, and Jamar Smith brought them back to within 3 to 24-21, and LSU kind of took it over a little bit from there. But I think Louisiana Tech wins this. Ole Miss, this is the upset I'm calling for the day. Ole Miss takes on LSU. Ole Miss, they have a quarterback, Jordan Tom, who passed for 442 yards last week. Their running back, Scotty Phillips, he's got 467 yards rushing. LSU, Joe Burrow, he's been game manager at quarterback, which is pretty much what they've needed forever. Their running game has Hilaire went over 100 yards last week. Nick Brossette had 3 touchdown runs. But I'm giving this to Ole Miss. I think their offense, LSU always has a really good defense, but like I said previously, Louisiana Tech threw for 350 yards against them, and Jordan Thomas could do the same. They might learn from what Louisiana Tech did well against LSU, and LSU could correct it as well, of course, but I think the talent Ole Miss has is better than Louisiana Tech had, and offensively, they can take way more advantage way more often. Now the defense for Ole Miss isn't that great, but LSU, even though they've looked really good, they're 4-0. They've shown they've only been able to do it with their running game, and their quarterback play is better than it has been in years, but it's not I wouldn't say it's not a weakness, but it's not a strength. It's not a weapon, and Jordan Ta'amu, the quarterback for Ole Miss, is a definite weapon. He can pass it all over the place. He can run it all over the place. I think I'm going with Ole Miss for the upset here. Oregon State Beavers take on the Arizona State Sun Devils. Oregon State, they lost last week to the Arizona Wildcats, 35-14. Their offense was actually held below 30 for the first time this year. Arizona State, they're 2-2. They had a nice win against Michigan State a few weeks ago. Then they lost in a close game to San Diego State, who's a really good team. Then they lost last week in another close game to Washington. Manny Wilkins at quarterback. He's a good quarterback, kind of a dual threat. He can pass it a little better. They have one of the best wide receivers in the country, and then Harry. Oregon State, Jamar Jefferson, he's their freshman running back who's done really well. Connor Blunt at quarterback, he's done well. This could be a close game, a shootout. I'm actually going with Arizona State though in the end. I think their team is just maybe overall better. So Arizona State wins that. USC Trojan taking on Arizona Wildcats. USC's coming off a nice win last week against Washington State. Their quarterback JT Daniels had 3 touchdown passes and kind of his coming out party. Arizona Khalil Tate, he's been kind of hobbled running it, so he's been more of a passer. But the last 2 games he's been effective as a passer. Their running back for Arizona, J.J. Taylor, went off last week running for 284 yards. Their other running back, Brightwell, ran for 113 yards. This could be a really good game. I'm going to give it to USC, though. I think USC, talent-wise, is a little more, and they might be able to kind of slow down their running game for Arizona, but who knows? Maybe Arizona got it going last week. This will be really interesting. USC, better be careful with that, but I'm going to go with USC. Marshall Thundering Herd, Western Kentucky. Marshall, their offense has looked pretty good. Isaiah Green at quarterback, he's done well. They lost last weekend to NC State, but they kept it close kind of for a little bit. Western Kentucky, they did get a win last week, but they haven't looked up to par for them with their offense. Marshall, I don't think Marshall should have much of a problem with that. Final game, the Toledo Rockets and the Fresno State Bulldogs. Toledo, their offense, they have one of the best wide receiving cores in the country that I've gone over and over again. Mitchell Guadani had 4 touchdown passes last week. They put up 63 on Nevada, winning 63 to 44, something like that. Fresno State, they had a bye last week. They killed UCLA a few weeks ago. Fresno State's one of the best teams in the Mountain West. Marcus McMaryion, he's a good quarterback. Keyshawn Johnson's a really good running back. Or not running back, he's a really good wide receiver, actually. He had over 1,000 yards last season. This could be a pretty good game, and it would go back and forth, I think. Toledo, but they got to go all the way to California. And I think Fresno State is just an overall really, really good team. So I'm actually going with Fresno State. Those are my week 5. That's my previews and breakdowns. If you guys have any comments, please ask me stuff. I love breaking this stuff down. If you have a favorite team you want me to, dive into a little bit more, I'll try to do better with the defensive stats for the future. I know I really focus on offense. I want to focus on everybody, all the players. So anyways, go, subscribe. Please subscribe. We need subscribers. Even if you don't comment, share this link, give me likes, do all the thing. Go follow our Twitter. We have a Facebook group, as I said in the beginning, Fan of Football 813. It'll be like there somewhere, or maybe there, or that over here. You guys know the drill. You know how the internet is, I say. We'll put links somewhere. If you have more ideas for me to do, tell me. Let me know. Peace.